Welcome back to the Kimberly Elaine Show, where we talk about stories, science, and strength behind chronic illness and the people turning pain into purpose. Today, I'm sitting down with somebody who embodies that phrase perfectly, Eddie Massey III. He's a neuroscience researcher, educator, and the founder of Roeh Labs, and where he's developing wearable tools to help educate people with autonomic disorders like dysautonomia, POTS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, ME/CFS, and long COVID. What makes Eddie's work so powerful is that he's not just studying these conditions, he actually is living with them. When doctors didn't give him answers, he built the technology himself to track his own body and uncover what's going wrong. Now he's helping others do the same, combining AI, neuroscience, and the heart to give it a voice. In this conversation, we'll talk about his personal journey, the intersection of chronic illness and innovation. Eddie, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us about yourself and what made you start creating videos online about what you're going through?
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for creating this space for people to tell their stories. So yeah, I have been dealing with dysautonomia for a few years. I had no idea what it was or what was going on. If you know the Spider-Man meme where one Spider-Man is pointing at the other one, is pointing at the other one, that's how I was with specialists. They're like, the endocrinology was like, you need to be at neurology. And neurology was like, no, you need to be at cardiology. And cardiology was like, no, go back to endocrinology. So I lived that meme and had no idea what was going on. Fast forward after much suffering, it led me to kind of take matters into my own hands and do a lot of research. And I ended up figuring out that I had some autonomic dysfunction. And now I'm working on helping educate others about the signs and symptoms and also building technology to help give patients objective data to give to their physicians and to help physicians to have real-time data where standard testing just doesn't work.
I think it's incredible, first of all, that you're going through this and you're also advocating for other people going through the same thing and you're working on something. And so just thank you on behalf of everyone that you're fighting for us and you're going through it. And my heart goes out to you for sure. So you talk about the intersection
Thanks.
between neuroscience and lived experience. How has your own health journey influenced the way you approach research and technology?
Yeah, so my original background is primarily in robotics and systems engineering. And so when you're building a robot, like 90% of the time, you're not building anything new. You're trying to figure out what's not working correctly. And so that kind of clicked to me one day, like with the body, when I'm building a robot or writing software, I can look and read logs and data and see exactly what's going on or what's not going on. But when it comes to the body, we are limited to a lot of like tests that are snapshots. So if I'm not having a flare up and maybe I get a tilt table test that day or some other autonomic test, nothing may show up. And then as soon as I leave the lab, because that's how life works,
Yes.
that's when I'm going to have a flare up. So my approach to thinking about neuroscience is not just what's happening in snapshot, but what's going on in the movie of someone's life in real time. How can we capture that to help the patient and the clinician really figure out what's going on?
I think that would be such an innovative process because, like you said, you show up to the test and everything will go perfectly fine. Everything can go right, and you can't find the answer that you're looking for. And so, having something extended period of time is going to be a really beautiful thing, I think, for people.
For sure, for sure. My goal is kind of to create like the Dexcom or the Freestyle Libre, but for the autonomic nervous system. So you can see what's happening in real time versus, waiting until a test that took you 5 years on a wait list to be able to get in the first place. And then now, you don't have any data.
Wow. What would it ideally look like? Would you put it on your arm, kind of like a glucose monitor, or would it look like something else? Would you have an app with it?
Yeah. So, The what we have right now is a chest-based wearable, so it's getting some signals from your heart, it's getting signals from your skin, and it's using that data to figure out what's going on, to give raw data about what's going on with your autonomic nervous system. So my full goal in the future is to be able to not just take the data, but actually use that to say, hey, we're going to stimulate the nerve because we think you're going to have a flare up in 30 minutes. So we're going to stimulate the nerve and block you from having this flare up. So that's kind of my full goal.
Wow. That's amazing. I would love to try that out. I think it'd be so interesting to try. Before we get into further, so the people that might not know what dysautonomia is, can you explain it in like layman's terms for people?
Sure. So when you're flying on a plane, your pilot doesn't have to manually control everything when he's taking you from one airport to the next. There is an autopilot feature that even helps with landing. So the pilots don't have to think about every single thing. Just like airplanes have a autopilot, your body has an autopilot called the autonomic nervous system, and it controls everything from your GI to glucose regulation, temperature regulation, heartbeats, blood pressure. There's so many things that it has a hand in controlling that you don't think about. But when it's not working properly, then you may not know what's not working, but you start to think about, hey, something's not happening properly. So when we deal with dysautonomia and autonomic dysfunction, we're talking about issues in this nervous system region.
Thank you so much for explaining. I really appreciate that. What do you think people misunderstand the most about dysautonomia, especially compared to, long COVID, EDS, things like that?
Well, first, people don't even really know it exists. Whether you're talking to average person on the street or a clinician, people really don't know that it exists. People don't know what type of symptoms. So I probably should have said, so you may deal with dizziness, like with POTS is an example of a type of dysautonomia. You stand up and now you're fainting or almost losing consciousness. People don't know that this class of disease really exists, and that's one of the major problems.
Sounds like it's the umbrella and everything underneath it can kind of be POTS, long COVID, all these different type of things. Am I right?
Yeah, so dysautonomia is like the umbrella for various diseases that, touch or impact the autonomic nervous system. Some diseases are more focused on like cardio issues. Some diseases have a stronger impact on like the GI system. A lot of these issues deal with a very extreme form of fatigue and crashing. And when you tell your doctor that you're extremely fatigued, they don't really understand that what you're really saying is, I have difficulty concentrating for long periods of time. I have difficulty doing normal day-to-day tasks for more than 5 to 10 minutes. If I exert myself physically or emotionally for more than 10 minutes, my body goes completely into a crash state and I have to lay down for 5 hours just to do 10 minutes of activity. So this can be a very debilitating type situation.
You're right. I think a lot of people will go in and then they'll just be dismissed. Oh, it's just hormones or it's just stressed or anxious. And then having what you're working on and all of that data backed up to bring in, that's going to be a game changer for people having that.
Yeah, that's the goal. So when I went to my Spider-Man neurologist, um, he was essentially like, well, you're a single parent and you have two kids, clearly, you're dealing with stress. These symptoms that you described, these are things that can't really happen in the body. There's no interaction between these symptoms. And then when I started talking about, heart palpitations and stuff like that. He was like, well, we know that the autonomic nervous system is a well regulated system in the body. And my autonomic nervous system was not a real well regulated system. So if I would
Right.
have been able to give him, like, well, according to this data, when I
Mhm.
stand up, my goes crazy. Can you please explain if this looks like it's something that's well regulated?
This is so needed in the community. Thank you so much for even working on this. This is going to be awesome. If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to answer. Was it triggered by something? Was it triggered by like COVID, your dysautonomia, or did it happen all of a sudden?
So I have a strange multi-system setup. So I have a right hip deformity. So I have a right femoral retroversion. In other words, the way my femur connects to my hip is pretty much backwards. So that gives me like hypermobility in my leg essentially. And the consequence of that is up the chain, I'm dealing with dysautonomia and other issues. I didn't really deal with it until an extremely stressful period of life where going through a divorce, becoming a single father, not taking care of myself. So that by the time I'm trying to take care of myself, my body is not adapting to anything that I'm doing. So in the end, for me, it's kind of three separate pathways that trigger symptoms. So there is just the stress, but that's only for me, it's like 10% of the time. The bigger things are my diet. So if I miss meals, I'll trigger a very challenging symptoms and my hip itself. So by being in certain positions, I can actually trigger heart palpitations or other autonomic issues by certain motions. So I went a period of almost a year without driving because of the challenges with my hip and it being different positions. It just made it difficult for me to do a lot of tasks.
I'm sorry that you're going through that. The fact that diet, stress. I'm not sure about sleep for you. Like when I get no sleep, symptoms are crazy. Having this already, I think you said you have EDS. So having EDS can be a huge thing.
No, I don't have EDS.
Sorry.
But I do have definitely I can do things with my hip in terms of hypermobility.
Yeah.
When I finally got to a very good orthopedic surgeon, it was a funny moment. Him and his medical student were in the office, and they asked me to do a particular motion, and they were just flabbergasted that I could do it. I was like, "What? Am I not supposed to move my hip like that?" They were like, "No."
Good party trick, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you talk about stress, and one of your first videos I ever saw of you was talking about mental health and suicide and
Mhm.
a suicide risk within the dysautonomia community. And one of the questions I have for you is why do you think this connection is still so under discussed? And what can clinicians or loved ones do differently?
Yeah, it's under discussed because honestly nobody believes us, and that is why people get into a lot of the suicidal ideation, and it the disease is difficult enough to handle, but feeling like you're alone and nobody believes you, family, loved ones, friends, and even, doctors puts you in a place where you are not you know, you I talked about this in a video today. You can be in a room with a million people and still feel lonely because you don't feel understood.
Yeah.
So when you don't feel understood, that's a very challenging place to be. So once more people are talking about this disease and the reality of it, it gives people more better place to feel understood.
That is so powerful. I don't know if you struggle with the same thing, but I have so much grief that like the suicidal ideation can really hit you at like those moments like you're grieving your what could have been or what like your past self or do you ever go through that too?
Mhm. Yeah, I went through a very strong, intense period of just dealing with suicidal ideation with the intensity of my symptoms. Somebody put in a comment today that it's like being imprisoned by sadness.
Mm.
It follows
Well,
you because you feel kind of
mm,
trapped in your body. And on
mm,
top of that, right, when you don't have a diagnosis, or even if you do, there's no clear treatment plan to like give you hope for the future. So that can create very dark emotions. And so for me, it was important to not only process those emotions, but also have, right, something to look forward to, a reason to hope. And kind of for me, that was my kids gave me the strength to fight through because like, well, I mean, what are they going to do if I'm gone?
yeah.
God
Mhm.
forbid something bad happens to me, but taking myself out of here and putting them kind of in that position, I kind of adding that kind of gave me strength to, continue to fight and move forward.
I know that you didn't know this, but when I came across your video, I was dealing with suicidal ideation at the time. And your video
Mm,
really helped. It really saved my life, to be honest with you. I was in a very dark place when I saw it. And seeing the community that you built underneath it and like having somebody that like you that's like researching and trying to help out and going through it at the same time, like you're doing such good in the world and I'm very glad you're here. I'm glad you didn't do anything to yourself. So thank you for being here, you know? Thank you for saving my life.
Well, thank you for being here. And creating this environment to discuss these
Uh-huh.
challenges because it's morbid, but it's also empowering what I'm about to say, which is that no one's coming to save us.
Yeah.
We in this community have the power to deal with these issues amongst one another and pool together resources, support one another in these dark times, share grief. And I think like when you collectively share both like the grief and the resources, like okay, you get a little of my grief, I get a little of yours,
Yeah.
but you also get some of my resource and I get some of yours. That's what gives
Mhm.
us the strength to move forward. So even a lot of the research I'm doing, although I'm a tied to academic institution as well, I can't really depend on that to fund
Mhm.
this research. So when you're dealing with a disease where you don't have power
Yep.
essentially over how you
Mhm.
feel, what you're doing, I feel it's important for us to take power and take control of the narrative. And we don't have to wait for anybody to deal with these issues.
Absolutely. I feel like the community, like doctors or maybe people that don't understand, they want to like silence us or like they just want to like shoo us away and be dismissed. So many of your followers relate to being dismissed by the medical system. From a researcher's perspective, what needs to change in how doctors are trained to recognize autonomic dysfunction?
Yeah, it is a very profound situation that we're in. The world is growing increasingly ill. There are more and more chronic illnesses. Dysautonomia in particular is increasing. We have more than double the cases in the quote unquote post COVID world. But doctors receive, according to some advocates, 2 hours of less of training on autonomic disorders in their entire 4-year curriculum. In addition to that, rather the reason for that is the way the approach to medical education is siloed by organ system. So we have different specialties according to organ systems. And this doesn't work in a lot of complex illnesses because when you're dealing with dysautonomia, ME/CFS, POTS, EDS, fibromyalgia, and we can go on and list so many different things. These illnesses are spanning several organ systems at the same time. And so because of that gap in education, um, there are, I don't remember the exact number, but it's about only 100 board certified autonomic specialists in the entire country. It's only about 100. So we have an increase in these types of diseases, and we have a poorly educated clinician pool, not poorly educated in medicine, but poorly educated in autonomic disorders. So this is kind of a silent crisis that's brewing. And that's why I think people have been attracted to some of my videos because of the gap in education. So we have to advocate, we have to educate, and we have to share our experiences. And that's part of us taking control and of what kind of the illness has stolen from us and presenting the narrative of reality. It's not just my stress. Stress sure isn't helping, but it's
Yeah.
much more
Mhm.
than just me being stressed.
Can you tell us more about Roeh Labs and the wearable that you're developing, how it measures autonomic signals, and what kind of data it can provide to patients and providers?
Yeah, so we are our goal ultimately, and even why I kind of have my own separate TikTok channel solving dysautonomia. So I've made it kind of my personal goal to combat this disease. And if we can find a way to reliably temper the symptoms of dysautonomia, that can impact, the whole class of diseases, right? And so my goal, like I mentioned before, is to be able to take signals from wearable data and put that into an AI model to pretty much say, hey, it looks like you're about to have a flare up. So we're going to go ahead and stimulate the nerve that is responsible for this flare up so that you can, skip out on this one. So that's the goal. It's called closed loop TVNS. I won't make it too technical. So to answer your question, the step one of that is to be able to reliably get data from your cardiovascular system. So this can be your heart rate, this may be your blood pressure. In addition, we want to deal with your temperature. There are things that we can grab from wearables that give us data about your autonomic nervous system. And so in step one, that's just tracking that and giving people tools to help them manage it. So if they wear the wearable for a month, the idea is for it to be able to say, hey, it looks like your baseline HRV, I don't know, is 100. I'm just making up stuff, is 100. When you have a crash, it jumps up to 150. We're seeing it between 150 and 160. So we think if you keep it your activities below a certain pace today, that's going to help you. So that's the first step in building towards a system that can be more of a therapy that helps manage it for you.
Do you believe that AI can give the body a voice, and what would that look like in practice? And how would that look like between patients and doctors?
Yeah, so the voice really is the data. And when I say AI, it's different than what you may interact with with ChatGPT. So I've been in AI before it was like cool. And so these are more mathematical models that's kind of taking in the data and outputting like predictions about what your flares or different symptoms. And so what that looks like, patients and doctors, is the doctor can see, for instance, we're looking at your say you have a glucose monitor and you're monitoring your autonomic system. They can say, hey, it looks like every time you eat a meal, we're seeing some crashes, some autonomic crashes. So the doctor can say, okay, it looks like you need to space out your meals. Instead of eating 3 meals a day, let's go into 6 meals and see if that helps your symptoms, because they have real time objective data and they can look at patterns and the doctors can provide you suggestions. So the goal is to give the doctors tools, not only the autonomic specialists, but your primary care doctors who are really the ones quarterbacking this. And a lot of times they're the ones trying to get labs ordered for us. And it's the specialists that are kind of, blocking. The idea is to give tools for the patient and the doctor.
This could be something even like eventually down the line that you can even coexist with or like reach out to collab with an Apple Watch or a Samsung, watch. I feel like that would be great together.
Yes, so that's actually really our step zero. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to be releasing an app, and the app is just going to work with existing wearables. So your Apple Watch and things like that. Not all of them will be supported on week one, obviously, but we'll work with some existing wearables and we'll be able to get whatever data we can from that. And that's going to give objective data. And then later on, we have a medically cleared device that we're working with for kind of the other phase.
This is so exciting. I'm so excited for you. Congratulations on launching this. Excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, so we are, if people want to test and help us pilot and see what see what bugs we have, what doesn't work. Yeah, we are looking for people to test and work with. So it's not a medical device. So don't sue me. Don't put me in jail. But it's providing data to help manage systems. So if I can give a picture, the app allows you to track your symptoms. And so it's going to automatically help you align your symptoms to the real time data. So this kind of helps you paint a picture that you can give to your doctor. That's the idea.
That is excellent. I'm super excited. Give me one I dropped my questions. So since you're getting into this and you're researching, how do you balance researching, being a scientist, with being someone that manages a chronic illness?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It gets pretty intense. So I have my robotics work, which pays my bills and makes sure that my children eat. I also like to say that I work for my children full time, and then I do everything else part time. But for me, a lot of the things that I talk about in the videos is because I've had to learn over the last 5 years. So for me, pacing is very important. Um, because I will have crashes. So I've learned to accept this is my body. This is how it works. If I want to do anything, I have to follow the pace of how my body is that day, that week, that month. Despite me producing a lot of videos, surprisingly, this was a pretty challenging month physically. So before and after a video, I might be laying down, preparing, to do the video. And then after the video, I'm laying down to make sure I don't have a crash. So the things that I talk about, a lot of them, I do them. Then, some days are like completely normal. Like, oh, okay, I guess I don't. So, um, with dysautonomia, that's the thing that makes it an invisible illness, and why some people are not believed is because the range of good days versus bad days is very unpredictable, and you can feel completely terrible on the outside, but because you can do certain things in your life to survive, you know, people think that you're normal. They don't know that you kind of feel like you like you literally feel like you're dying as you're
Yes.
doing activities. So the key to doing research, and even balancing my children is just pacing myself, taking it slow, taking it one day at a time. Um, wherever I do have help, taking advantage of it.
Do you know what the spoon theory is?
No.
It actually started from the chronic illness, somebody that deals with it. And they say like everybody starts off with 20 spoons, and a chronic illness person can
Mhm,
take 5 spoons a day to eat. I feel like you're using up all your spoons to take care of your
mhm.
kids and make sure you take care of you too, you know?
Yeah, that's what helped get me into this place, was not taking care of me and having spoons for myself. So for me, that's kind of where the rest and the pacing comes in. So yeah, gotta preserve the spoons.
So you built your strong online community. How do you handle the emotional weight of all the stories that you read? Because it's a lot of people that commented underneath the videos. And how do you hold all that weight while dealing with everything?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's very surprising. So I didn't expect the type of response I suddenly have received. Um, and the stories, it's very interesting, the types of challenges that people face and the depths of them. There was someone that commented about, how they essentially lost multiple organs, and they've had to have these specialized procedures to keep them going because of their variant of EDS. And you see so many of those, and it's a weird thing where it's both heartbreaking and inspiring at the same time. It's heartbreaking because you are seeing what somebody's going through, and you know that there's literally nothing you can do about it. There's not even anything you can really say, that will, I mean, feel better, really. So that's a challenge. But then it's also inspiring in terms of, we have to keep doing this work because this shouldn't be their story. And if we can build something, whether by educating people so that they have one less flare day, or by doing research and building translational technology, if we can do something, one less person may suffer in this way. And so I used to be a pastor bivocationally, and I see this work as like sacred, even though it's not like preaching or anything, but it's dealing with people's vulnerability. It's dealing with people most painful, darkest parts, essentially. And so it makes me think of a scripture where in the Bible where Jesus was like, the people are like sheep without a shepherd. And like people, in this analogy, it's like people don't have doctors that are listening to them, right? So, they're going and looking for answers where they can find them. So it helps me knowing that despite the stories that people are sharing, they're also sharing it because they don't have places to share it. So even if somebody's leaving a really depressing comment and there's nothing I can think of to say to help them, like sometimes I like literally am just like, there's got to be something I can say.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing I can say. But it helps knowing they feel better knowing that they can say that and I understand it and all the other people in the comments understand it. So being available just to create that space, knowing that it's doing something for somebody is helpful.
You gave them a place to have their voice listened to, and that's better gift or anything you could say in general.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, where do you want to see it in the next 5 years?
So in 5 years, I want to be in a place where we're doing clinical trials for this therapy approach to automatically managing the dysautonomia. So that's my goal. So it'll take a few years to get there. So we've got the phase 0, and part of this is something that I'm really not going to be able to do without you in the community. So part of this of getting to that place where we're doing clinical trials is being that these diseases are so understudied in the research community. There's not a lot of data, especially the data that I'm looking at. So my goal is to do the largest study on dysautonomia related diseases where essentially everybody gets a wearable and they're wearing them for like a month, and we can figure out like what a flare up is for these varying conditions. And the idea is that the data would be obviously anonymous, so nobody's name is attached to their data, but open data that allows researchers from all over to be able to analyze and do experiments with. So in 5 years' time, I want to be at that clinical trial level, and I want it to be said that we have created, over 100 new scientists in the space because we have so much data about these disorders, and they're coming up with ideas and they're doing trials and therapy because, we have 5,000 people who have created this crazy open data set.
Well, you're building a great community, and hopefully you'll get all the data that you need. And so for the community, my last question is, what do you want to leave listeners, and especially those feeling unseen, about self-advocacy and vision, hope, or just a message for them in general?
Yeah, you are seen, you are heard, you are loved, your experience is real, and it matters, right? So it doesn't matter, one thing I would tell doctors is that, you know, we can't be so confident about these little snapshots of information. People die suddenly from brain aneurysms and from things that, these little snapshot tests don't show. So to the community at large, while we respect medicine and its role, we have to put the reality of the state of like what healthcare is in the proper perspective, that it has blind spots. It's limited both by technology and insurance. So some insurance companies saying that they're not going to do your tests, and some doctor who hasn't studied these disorders does not mean that what you experience is not real. What you experience is real. There is hope to figure it out, even if it's a tough search and you're like me going through, millions of neurologists, but keep fighting the good fight. Don't give up, and don't expect people who haven't dealt with this to understand it or even be very helpful. So we have to rely on ourselves in this community of dysautonomia, and I would say invisible illnesses at large, endometriosis, whatever it is. We have to rely, our community, and we can support each other and talk to one another and understand each other when other people may not.
Your story is incredibly powerful, Eddie. And where can people find you if they want to find you?
So on TikTok, solving dysautonomia, I've been getting requests to make a Discord. So that'll be up soon. The link for that will be in the Discord. I mean, the link for the Discord and all that
Mhm.
will be on TikTok shortly. And I will, over the weekend, be expanding to the other platforms at the same name.
Well, thank you, Eddie, so much for your time. And I just appreciate you so much. And I hope that you have a wonderful night.
You too. Thank you so much for building this platform, for having these critical conversations and taking the courage to, you know, just be in front of the camera and reach out to people to be able to talk to. It takes a lot of
Mhm.
effort, a lot of energy, and sometimes you may get no's or be ignored completely. So thanks for taking the
Mhm.
being willing to do that. Really appreciate it.